my vision smeared at the edges like wet paint dragged by an unsteady hand. The bar's golden light fractured into strange halos, swelling and collapsing as I tried to focus on the rim of the glass I'd just set down. Something was wrong. Wrong in a way that crawled up the back of my neck and whispered run, even though my legs had already begun to soften beneath me. Voices dipped and stretched, warped as if they were underwater. I tasted metal, fear, and the faint sweetness of whatever had been slipped into my drink. I blinked hard. The room tilted. Someone laughed too loudly. Someone else went silent. And then I saw him. The man who had been watching me all night, the one with eyes like sharpened stillness. The Mafia Boss. He rose from his seat, and everything inside me braced. The rain had followed me all day, needling the city with the same quiet persistence as the thoughts I didn't want to think anymore. By the time I reached the entrance of Lumens, an upscale bar on West Madison with a reputation for velvet shadows and clientele who spoke in lowered voices, my hair was damp around the edges of my coat, and my nerves were still humming from the phone call that should have felt like a victory. A promotion. Not a big one. Barely a title change, hardly a raise. But it was something. A crack of light in months of exhaustion and holding myself together with hope no bigger than a thumbnail. So I told myself I deserved a drink. One drink. 1 hour where my life didn't feel like a rope pulled too tight. Inside, the warmth wrapped around me first. Deep amber lighting, soft jazz, the scent of bourbon and expensive cologne. The kind of place where you pretended you belonged, even if the price of a single cocktail could feed you for 3 days. I slipped into a booth near the back, the leather plush beneath my palm as I exhaled. My shoulders ached from a week of pretending everything was fine, of making myself smaller so no one would notice the cracks. The waitress, a woman in her 30s with a sleek ponytail and tired eyes, gave me a gentle smile. "What can I get you?" "Something celebratory, but not sweet." God, I sounded like someone trying to reinvent herself mid-sentence. She nodded. "I'll bring you our house, Manhattan." As she walked away, I let my gaze drift. Maybe that was when I first noticed him. Not fully, more like the prickle of awareness that someone's gaze had brushed my skin. A presence, a gravity, unseen but undeniable. But I ignored it. I was used to feeling watched, even when no one was there. Trauma had sharp edges like that. I focused instead on the low gold glow of the bar, the way the light caught on the glass shelves, turning the bottles into jeweled ghosts. It was beautiful, in a melancholic way, like the kind of place you went when you were trying to outrun a version of yourself. The drink arrived. I murmured thanks and lifted it, letting the scent of rye warm the quietest parts of me. 1 sip. Smooth. Strong. Exactly what I needed. I had just begun to relax when I heard it. "Hey, I thought that was you." My blood froze. No, not tonight. Not here. But when I turned, there he was. Daniel. My ex. The man who once said he loved me in a voice soft enough to break me, then broke me anyway. He wore that same effortless smile, the one strangers thought was charming until they learned better. His hair was perfectly styled, his coat expensive, his posture casual in a way only someone deeply calculating could pull off. "Wow," he said as though we were old friends meeting by chance. "You look good. Really good." I hated that my chest tightened, that the old panic, the rehearsed calm, the subtle bracing returned like muscle memory. "Daniel, I said, keeping my tone flat. "What are you doing here?" "Same as you." He slid into the booth without waiting to be invited. Celebrating. Of course he was. People like him always found a way to turn someone else's space into their own. I straightened, keeping my eyes on my glass. I'm having a quiet night, alone. He laughed softly. "Come on, sweetheart. I know you. You hate drinking alone." The old endearment, used casually, knifed through me. I inhaled. "Please leave." His expression didn't change, but something behind his eyes did. A flicker, a familiar tightening. "Don't be dramatic," he said. "I'm just saying hi. That's all I want. A hi." I gestured toward the door. "Now you can go." Silence stretched between us. He tapped a finger on the table, a slow rhythm I remembered too well. Each tap a warning, a signal, a reminder of all the nights I kept my voice calm to keep the peace. Then he smiled again, softer, almost convincing. "You look stressed. Let me buy you another drink." "No." "You sure? That one's almost gone." I looked down. I'd taken only 2 sips. He was lying, testing me, seeing if I'd argue. I stayed quiet. His gaze flicked to the bar. He signaled the bartender with a small wave, confident, entitled. I recognized the look on the bartender's face, discomfort mixed with reluctant obedience. Daniel had that effect. "Daniel," I said, reaching for my purse. "I'm serious. I want to be alone." "You don't mean that." He said it the way someone states a fact, not an opinion. But I did mean it, and he knew that. The bartender set another Manhattan on the table. Fresh, dark, beautiful. Daniel smiled like he'd done me a kindness. "Drink up, sweetheart. You look like you could use it." I stared at the glass. Something inside me shrank. The way it used to. The way it always did around him. He leaned in slightly. "Come on. One drink won't hurt you." I forced my voice steady. "I already said—" I stopped. Someone was watching us. Not vaguely, not casually. Watching. A man at the far end of the bar. The one I'd noticed earlier without really noticing. Dark hair. Broad shoulders beneath a tailored suit. Hands folded. Relaxed. But his posture carried a quiet power that didn't need to announce itself. He wasn't pretending to look elsewhere. He wasn't being subtle. His gaze was trained directly. On me. No, on Daniel's hand. The one resting too close to my drink. Heat crawled up my spine. Daniel followed my gaze, and for the first time that night, his smile faltered. "What?" he said, sitting straighter. I shook my head. "Nothing. I need to use the restroom." Daniel reached for my wrist. Too quickly. Too familiar. "Wait," I pulled back. "I'll be right back." His jaw tensed, but he let go. I slid out of the booth, smoothing my dress with hands that trembled more than I wanted to admit. My heels clicked softly against the polished floor as I headed to the restroom, breathing slowly, counting my steps. I pushed the door open and leaned against the sink immediately, gripping the porcelain hard enough to hurt. "God," I whispered. "Not tonight." My reflection stared back, eyes wide, makeup slightly smudged from the rain, lips pressed tight. I looked like someone pretending to be fine, someone who practiced being fine. I splashed water on my hands, letting the coolness ground me. Just 5 minutes, I told myself. 5 minutes, and he might be gone. When I stepped back out into the dim corridor, the atmosphere of the bar had shifted. Quieter, thicker, like the air was waiting for something. Daniel sat exactly where I left him, but he wasn't alone anymore. The man from the bar stood at the edge of the booth, posture elegant but edged with something lethal. His gaze flicked to me the second I appeared. Sharp, measured, as though he'd been tracking my return to the second. Daniel looked irritated. "Do you need something?" he hissed at the stranger. The man didn't look at him. He looked at the Manhattan, the one Daniel had ordered. I took a step closer. "Is everything okay?" The man's voice was low, smooth, controlled. "You shouldn't sit." "What?" My brow furrowed. "Not yet." Daniel scoffed. "Dude, mind your own business." The man tilted his head, as if studying a specimen. "I am." I swallowed. My pulse jumped. He lifted the glass between two fingers. Slow, deliberate, unbothered by Daniel's sputtering protest. The drink looked different in his hand. Smaller, more dangerous. Then he turned it slightly, just enough for me to see the faint residue clinging to the rim. Something dull, powdery, wrong. My stomach dropped. Daniel stiffened. "What the hell are you doing?" The man finally looked at him. Really looked. And Daniel went silent. The entire room seemed to hush with him. My breath froze. The stranger's voice remained calm. Too calm. "You almost made a very costly mistake." A tremor ran through me. Daniel's face paled. I don't know what you're talking about." The man didn't blink. Every instinct in me screamed, this is not an ordinary man. But all I could say was, "What's happening?" He turned to me then, and for a moment the world narrowed to the precision of his gaze, dark, unreadable, impossibly steady. "You're dizzy," he said. I opened my mouth to deny it, and the room tilted. Just slightly. Just enough. The edges of the golden lights blurred. The murmurs of nearby conversations stretched thin. My fingertips tingled, and my knees weakened with a sudden, nauseating rush. Oh God, no. My breath hitched as the walls swayed like slow waves rolling in. Something's wrong, I whispered. "I know," he said. I blinked up at him, vision shimmering. "Don't," my voice broke. "Don't let me fall." He moved toward me, and then I saw nothing else. Fade to black. Darkness wasn't a clean, empty thing. It pulsed. It breathed. It had weight, and mine pressed in on me from all directions, thick and warm and uneasy. I couldn't tell if my eyes were closed, or if I had simply slipped somewhere deeper than unconsciousness. A place where thoughts floated like half-formed shadows, and sensation tugged at me in slow, drifting waves. I tried to move. My fingers twitched. A good sign, maybe. Maybe. Sound seeped in next, muted at first, like voices down a long hallway. A door closing. Footsteps. The heavy hum of an engine somewhere close. Leather creaking. My name, but not spoken by a voice I recognized. I forced my eyes open. The world snapped into blurry shapes. A ceiling. Dark. Smooth. Something soft beneath me. A bench seat? No. Leather. The smell of expensive upholstery, warm cologne, and city rain hit me next. I knew immediately I was not in the bar anymore. Panic flared painfully through my chest. I tried to sit up, but the world lurched sideways and I fell back with a soft, humiliating thud. "Stop moving!" His voice. Low, steady, unmistakable. I blinked until he came into focus. The man from the bar, the one who stepped in before everything went dark, sat across from me in the back of a car, so sleek and silent it barely felt like it was moving. The interior lighting cast faint shadows along his jaw, sharpening every strong, unreadable line of his face. He wasn't looking at me. Not at first. He was watching the city slide past the tinted window, one hand resting loosely on his knee, the other fixed around something silver. My purse. My purse. He shifted his gaze to me finally, and my pulse stumbled. "You're awake." His tone wasn't gentle. It wasn't cruel. It was factual, as if he had expected me to wake exactly at this moment, neither earlier nor later. "Where?" I swallowed, throat dry. "Where am I?" "In my car." I waited for more. He didn't offer it. A tremor ran through me, partly from the drug still in my system, partly from the realization that I was entirely at this man's mercy, whoever he was. "Why?" My voice cracked embarrassingly. "Why am I in your car?" "Because you collapsed," he said. "And because the staff at Lumens doesn't know how to handle situations like yours without making a scene." "A scene?" I forced a shaky breath. "You think I care about a scene? I was drugged. Not someone." His expression tightened just slightly. "Your ex." I froze. Horror clawed up my throat in a cold, bitter wave. Everything at the bar replayed in flashes. The drink, Daniel's smile, the man watching us, the dizziness, the world tilting. "How do you know that?" I whispered. He held my gaze, steady and unblinking, as if measuring how much truth I could handle. "Because I saw him drop something into your glass," he said. "Because I watched him push it toward you. And because if I had intervened 2 minutes later, you wouldn't have been able to stand." My stomach twisted, nausea surging painfully. Daniel. God. He really would have let it happen. He would have watched me drink it. I pressed a hand to my forehead, squeezing my eyes shut as the car's interior swayed. Every breath came shallow and tremoring. "Easy," the man said. The word shouldn't have steadied me, but it did. I blinked up at him again. His eyes were dark in a way that didn't feel empty, more like a depth that swallowed the room around him. What happened after I fell? He studied me for a long, uncomfortable second. "You don't remember?" I shook my head. His jaw flexed once before he answered. "Your ex panicked. Tried to leave." Tried. Past tense. A chill ghosted down my spine. "Did he hurt you?" I asked before I could stop myself. "No," he said simply. "He didn't get the chance." Something about how he said that, calm, composed, as if violence was not a possibility but a certainty, made my mouth go dry. "What did you do to him?" The question barely escaped my lips. He didn't answer immediately. He didn't look away either. His voice, when it came, was cool and controlled. "Nothing I regret." God. My heartbeat stuttered into something unsteady and frightened, and something else. Something warmer, deeper, shameful. Fear and safety warred inside me so intensely I could barely breathe. I swallowed. "Are you taking me to a hospital?" "No." My breath caught. "Why not?" "Because you're not dying," he said plainly. "And because hospitals ask questions you're not sober enough to answer yet." His tone held no softness, but no threat either. Just logic spoken by a man who was used to giving instructions, not explanations. I forced another breath, fighting the dizzy swirl around the edges of my vision. "Then where are you taking me?" "My building." It landed like a stone in my stomach. "Your building," I echoed, barely above a whisper. Why would I go there? "You need somewhere safe," he said. "And your ex is not going to give up easily." The panic that leapt inside me was instant, hot, suffocating. No, I can't go to some stranger's place. You'd rather go home?" he asked sharply. I opened my mouth and froze. Images stabbed through me. My front door, Daniel leaning in the hall's shadows. The way he always somehow knew where to find me after I told him not to. The way the deadbolt once clicked behind me even though I never touched it. How he'd waited in his car across the street for hours after our final breakup, smiling when I finally stepped outside. My throat tightened. My chest trembled. I don't know. The man watched every flicker of fear cross my face, and something in his expression shifted. Barely, subtly. Not compassion. Not sympathy. Something colder, angrier. Directed at Daniel, not me. "You're not safe at home," he said. "Not tonight." I closed my eyes. The drug's remnants drifted through me like thin smoke coils. "Who are you?" I whispered. The question hung there between us. He answered with the kind of honesty people feared hearing. "My name is Leon." Just Leon. But the way he said it carried weight. Recognition. Like it was a name that meant something in rooms most people never entered. He leaned forward slightly, the distance between us shrinking in a way that made the air feel charged. "And I've been watching your ex for weeks." My heart stopped. "What? Why?" "Because he's reckless," Leon said. "Because he stepped into places he shouldn't have. And because men like him don't understand boundaries until someone enforces them." This time, the tremor in my chest had nothing to do with the drug. "What places?" I whispered. Leon's gaze traced my face slowly, stopping at my eyes. "You don't want to know that part," he said. But I did. God help me, I did. Still, I stayed quiet. Nerves pulled tighter and tighter inside me, vibrating beneath my skin. The car slowed, then stopped. Leon's hand moved to the door handle, but he paused, just for a heartbeat, before looking at me again. "You can walk on your own," he said, "or I can help you. The drug will make the first few steps difficult." His voice wasn't unkind. It wasn't gentle either. It was exactly like he'd been in the bar. Unshakable, grounded, dangerously certain. I tried to stand without assistance. My legs buckled instantly. Leon caught me smoothly, one arm around my waist, the other steadying my wrist. His touch was strong, firm, not intrusive. A steady grip that held me up rather than holding me down. Heat shot through me, unwanted and overwhelming. "Easy," he murmured. "Don't rush." We stepped out of the car and into an underground parking garage, quiet, immaculate, private. Definitely not public. Definitely not somewhere a normal person lived. A security elevator waited at the far end. Leon guided me toward it, his body warm beside mine, solid enough to keep the swaying world from tipping again. As the elevator doors shut, I caught our reflection in the mirrored steel. Him tall and unmovable, me leaning into him out of necessity, but feeling every inch of it. "Why are you helping me?" I whispered, my voice thin but truthful. He held my gaze in the reflection. "Because you needed it," he said. The elevator ascended, numbers ticking upward. "And," he added quietly, "because I don't like watching bad men touch good women." My breath stilled. The doors opened to a penthouse hallway lined in marble and silence. Leon led me inside. I barely had time to take in the high ceilings. The floor-to-ceiling windows. The view of the city glittering below. Before another dizzy wave crashed through me, harder than the last. I grabbed the wall, heartbeat detonating in my ears. "Something's wrong." Leon's hands were on me in an instant, steadying me, turning me toward him. "You're going to be sick," he said. "Let it happen." "No," I rasped, humiliation burning. "No, I don't." The room spun violently. My stomach dropped. Everything tilted. "Leon," I choked. Darkness surged up the sides of my vision. He cupped the back of my neck. "I've got you." And then the world collapsed again, pulling me under. Coming back to consciousness felt like swimming upward through thick, warm water. Something soft pressed against my cheek. Fabric, smooth and cool. And for a long, uncertain moment, I didn't know where I was or how I'd gotten there. My brain lagged behind my senses, struggling to reassemble reality piece by piece. I exhaled shakily, and the breath came out warm against a pillow. A pillow. A bed. A room that didn't smell like my apartment. My eyes opened. I lay in a dimly lit bedroom, an enormous space wrapped in shadows broken by the faint glow of the city bleeding through half-drawn blackout curtains. The sheets beneath me were high thread count and crisp against my skin. My shoes were gone. My coat was gone. Someone had placed a glass of water on the nightstand, the condensation still fresh. I pushed up on my elbows. Instant regret. The room tilted sharply. A low voice drifted from the doorway. "Slow down." My head whipped toward the sound, but even that small movement sent a soft wave of nausea through me. I pressed a hand to my forehead. Leon stepped into the room, closing the door behind him with a quiet click that somehow made my pulse jump. He wasn't wearing the heavy coat from earlier, just a black dress shirt, sleeves rolled to the elbows, collar undone at the throat in a way that should have looked casual but didn't. Nothing about him was casual. He didn't move like a man walking toward a bed. He moved like a man approaching a threat, or a responsibility. I couldn't tell which one I was. "What time is it?" My voice was rough, strained. "Late." He pulled a chair from the corner of the room and set it beside the bed, sitting with his elbows on his knees, watching me. Always watching. How long was I out? 2 hours. Only 2? It felt like days, or seconds. I couldn't decide. A quiet shiver crawled across my skin. The room wasn't cold, but something in the air made me feel as though the temperature had dropped. I glanced down and realized someone had draped a soft charcoal blanket over me, heavy enough to anchor me, light enough not to panic me. "Did you?" I gestured to the blanket. "Yes," Leon said simply. "You were shaking." I didn't know how to respond to that, so I didn't. I tried to sit up again, but the room wobbled dangerously, and this time Leon rose before I hit the mattress. He reached out, steadying me with one hand on my upper back, the other lightly bracing my shoulder. His touch was warm, firm, but not forcing. "Don't fight it," he murmured. "The drug isn't finished leaving your system." "I hate this," I breathed, frustration tightening my throat. "I hate not having control." "I know," he said. The way he said it carried no condescension. No softness either. Just truth. His thumb accidentally brushed the side of my arm. My body reacted immediately. Heat blooming under my skin, breath catching. A pulse, jumping low in my stomach. He stepped back as if he felt it too. "Drink." He nodded to the glass on the nightstand. My hands trembled, but I managed to pick it up. The water tasted like nothing and everything at once. When I finished, Leon took the empty glass from my fingers and set it aside. "You'll start to feel clearer soon. The dizziness will last a bit longer." I stared at him, unable to quiet the spiraling thoughts clawing through my mind. "What happened at the bar after I collapsed?" His jaw tightened, a small motion, barely there, but unmistakable. "You fell. I caught you. And your ex tried to run." "Run?" My stomach twisted. He knew exactly what he did. "He did," Leon agreed, voice cold enough to freeze bone. "And he would have preferred you collapsing alone so he could control the narrative." "Control the..." You mean make it look like I drank too much? That you brought it on yourself. Leon's eyes darkened. Men like him always leave their victims doubting themselves. Victims. The word scraped something raw inside me. What did he do when you stopped him? Leon leaned back in the chair, forearms resting on the armrests now. He didn't look away. He panicked, stumbled over excuses, reached for a story he thought would protect him. His lips curved in something colder than a smile. It didn't. I swallowed hard. What did you do to him? A slow breath left Leon's nose, patient, controlled. I made him understand he couldn't leave, and that I was not the man he wanted to lie to. The way he said that made the back of my neck prickle. You didn't hurt him? I asked. Hurt is a scale, he said after a moment. He's alive. That's the part you need to know. It wasn't an answer, and somehow, it was. A long silence fell between us. My heart felt too big in my chest, thudding painfully, each beat weaker than I wanted it to be. Finally, I whispered, Why were you watching him? You said you've been watching him for weeks. Leon didn't shift or darken or react the way someone caught doing something wrong might. Instead, he tilted his head slightly, studying me in a way that felt unnervingly intimate. He made a mistake, Leon said. A big one. Involving you? I asked. No, he said. Then, after a beat, not directly. Then why? He got involved with people he shouldn't have. People who aren't merciful. People who keep lists. A chill ran down my arms. What kind of people? Leon's gaze held mine with quiet finality. People like me. The words punctured the air. I'd suspected it, his presence, his confidence, the way the bar staff glanced at him with something like fear and respect, but hearing him say it was different. Hearing him confirm it lodged a knot in my throat. You're Mafia, I whispered. His brow lifted slightly. That's a simplistic term. But accurate? In broad strokes. I drew the blanket tighter around my shoulders without realizing I was doing it. My breath shook, not just from fear, but from the sudden, overwhelming awareness that I was alone in a penthouse with a man who could decide the fate of another person with a nod. And he'd chosen to help me. The confusion of it hit me like a wave. Why intervene at all? My voice hovered on the edge of a tremor. You don't know me. Leon's eyes softened by an imperceptible margin. Not warmer, just less guarded. I saw enough. Enough of what? The way you watched the room when he sat beside you. The way your shoulders tightened. The way you tried not to show him fear you couldn't hide. He paused. And the way he smiled at you. It wasn't affection. It was possession. My throat tightened painfully. He continued, quieter now. Some men only protect what's theirs. Some men protect what's vulnerable, and some men protect what shouldn't bleed. Which one are you? I whispered. His answer came without hesitation. The third. Heat shot through me. Not desire, not yet, but something electric, something sharp-edged and frighteningly magnetic. You should rest, he said, standing. But something inside me panicked at the idea of him leaving the room. Wait, I blurted. He stilled, turning back slowly. I don't want to be alone. The admission burned with humiliation. Not right now. Leon studied me, expression unreadable. Then he crossed the room, but instead of sitting again, he stayed standing at the foot of the bed, hands in his pockets. Posture relaxed, but unmistakably vigilant. You're safe, he said. Because of you, I whispered. His gaze flicked downward for a moment, as if my words pulled something taut inside him, before he met my eyes again. For now, he corrected. A small, involuntary shiver worked through me. Leon? Yes. What happens next? The question was barely audible, and for the first time since I met him, his silence felt heavy, like he was weighing a truth that couldn't be taken back. Finally, he said, "Next, you'll learn why your ex ran." A tremor shot through me. Why? Because he owes us money. Leon stepped closer, not enough to touch me, but enough to feel the shift in the air between us. And because men who owe my organization tend to get desperate. I swallowed. Desperate enough to drug someone? Desperate enough to do worse. My pulse turned to fire. And involving you, Leon added, voice low, was the last mistake he was ever going to make. A moment passed. My breath wavered. Leon, what are you planning to do to him? He didn't blink. That depends, he said. On what? On whether you want to be part of the consequences. My blood turned cold and hot at the same time. Part of... I'm not asking you to hurt him, Leon cut in. I'm asking whether you want him held accountable. Truly accountable. Images slammed through me. The drink, the smile, the lies, the fear I swallowed for months, the way the world tilted in my hands before darkness swallowed me. My lip trembled. Yes. Leon's jaw set. Then he will be. My heart thudded painfully. I pulled the blanket tighter and whispered, "What do you need from me?" He stepped closer. Close enough that I had to tilt my chin up to meet his eyes. Close enough that his presence felt like a wall around me, solid and impenetrable. His voice dropped to a murmur. "Just this," he said. "Don't run from me." My breath caught. "I'm not." "You will," he said, "when you learn more." He wasn't wrong. Something deep inside me already felt like it was shifting, cracking, changing shape in ways I didn't understand. A dizzy wave hit again. Not as strong, not the drug's fault this time. Just the shock of everything colliding at once. Leon steadied me when I swayed. "You need sleep," he said again. I swallowed hard. "Will you be here when I wake up?" His answer was immediate. Yes. I exhaled, bone-deep relief loosening something in my chest. He stayed until my eyes grew heavy again, until the darkness pulled me under more gently this time, until the outline of him standing guard was the last thing I saw. And for the first time in months, I didn't fall asleep afraid. The whisper of glass against wood sounded too loud, like the bar had emptied even though it was full. My pulse pressed against my ribs in a frantic, trembling rhythm. I tried grounding myself with slow breaths, but every inhale felt shallow, like there wasn't enough air in the room, or maybe there wasn't enough air inside me. I blinked hard, thinking the dizziness was stress, thinking maybe the long week and the wine were catching up to me. But then the lights began to smear. Just a little, like water dragged across fresh paint, and something in me tightened. The bar didn't tilt. My vision did. A warning crawled up my spine. I swallowed, but my throat felt wrong. Tight. Dry. I tried reaching for my purse and misjudged the distance by an inch. My fingers closed on air. For a second I froze, staring at my own hand like it belonged to someone else. No. 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 I forced my eyes to stay open, to stay alert, but they kept wanting to drift into a drowsy half-focus. A soft, warm blur. Sedatives. It had to be. My heartbeat tripped. A cold, trembling wash flooded through my body, as if it realized before my mind did. Something's wrong. Something's wrong. Something's wrong. I looked toward the bar to steady myself, and that's when I saw him. The man in the suit. He was moving, slowly, intentionally, cutting through the room with a presence that didn't match anyone else here. People weren't stepping aside because they saw him. They stepped aside because they felt him. Like instinct, like gravity. His eyes were fixed on me. Not the room. Not the exit. Not my ex, who was pretending to scroll on his phone with the fakest calm I'd ever seen. Me. And when his gaze met mine, I felt it. Stillness, cool and sharp. Like he was assessing, calculating, absorbing every detail in a fraction of a second. Not panicked, not confused, decisive. I didn't know his name yet. Only the weight of his attention. I blinked again, and the world doubled for a heartbeat. I steadied myself with one hand on the table, but it only made it more obvious. I was losing control of my own body. I tried to stand. My knee buckled, and then a hand curled around my arm. Not rough, not tender, just firm enough to stop my fall. My ex's voice hit my ear like static. "Wow, you okay? Too much to drink, babe?" The pet name made bile rise in my throat. I pulled away, but the room sloshed like a wave. His hand stayed on me, fingers gripping tighter than necessary. Too tight. A possessive grip. The grip of a man who wanted me weak. I felt my stomach ice over. I needed to get away. From the table. From him. From... My vision blurred again, softer this time, like it wasn't even trying to stay focused. I tried to speak, but the words tangled, thick and heavy. "Don't touch me," I managed, but it came out faint, like I was speaking from underwater. He smiled. Actually smiled. "Relax," he murmured, fake concern slipping only for a second before his real expression surfaced. Annoyance, impatience, something sharper. "I'm trying to help." But it didn't feel like help. It felt like ownership. A hand closed over my ex's wrist. A different hand. Larger. Steadier. Absolutely still. I didn't have to turn. I knew whose it was. I could feel him behind me, presence looming like a shadow anchored in place. The man in the suit. The quiet around us changed, shifted, drew taut as if the entire bar inhaled at once. My ex twisted, annoyed. "Hey, can I help you?" "You should remove your hand," the man behind me said, voice low and even, the kind of calm that made the hairs rise on the back of my neck. It wasn't a question. It wasn't anger. It was a fact, a command wrapped in velvet. My ex scoffed. "Mind your business, man." I felt the man behind me still further, if that was possible, like he was subtracting something inside himself. Patience, maybe. Mercy. "This is my business," he said quietly. "Move your hand." The tone made something deep in my chest thrum. Fear and something I couldn't name tangled together. The room was too warm, or I was too cold. My ex's grip tightened on my arm, subtle but painful. "She's fine," he said through clenched teeth. "We're just leaving." "We aren't," I whispered, or tried to. The words floated, barely audible. The man behind me heard them. Of course he did. His fingers flexed on my ex's wrist. Not painful, not yet, just enough to make the message undeniable. "I watched you put something in her drink," he said, voice soft enough that only we heard it. But soft didn't make it gentle. "You're going to take your hand off her, and you're going to stay very, very still." My breath hitched. My knees trembled. The world glimmered faintly at the edges again. My ex's mask shattered. "That's crazy," he said quickly. Too quickly. "I didn't..." The man behind me leaned in, voice lowering further. "Lie to me again, and you won't walk out of here." My pulse lurched. My ex's face blanched for a split second before his anger surged. "You threatening me?" His hand clamped on me harder, like I was leverage, not a person. And that, apparently, was the last mistake he was going to be allowed to make. A sudden shift, barely perceptible, passed through the man behind me. His attention sharpened into something lethal, but not loud, not dramatic. A quiet, efficient kind of danger. His fingers tightened on my ex's wrist, just enough to make joints strain. "Let her go." My ex inhaled sharply, eyes widening. "Ow. Okay, he released me. The moment his grip was gone, the man behind me caught my elbow before I could sway. Not possessive, not controlling, just anchoring me upright with the same kind of ease as someone steadying a candle in wind. I leaned instinctively, but the dizziness made my balance unreliable. His hand stayed firm, still, a stabilizing presence I didn't fully understand. I tried lifting my head to look at him properly, but the motion made the room tilt, and I had to blink fast to keep from collapsing. "Stay still," he murmured, quiet, close, meant only for me. "You're okay. I've got you." The words weren't tender. They were measured, controlled. But something in me responded anyway. My ex, holding his wrist with a wince, shot me a look, anger mixed with panic. "She's just drunk," he snapped, desperate now. "You're blowing this out of—" "Sit," the man behind me ordered him, and the word was so cold, so absolute, that even I felt it ripple through the air. My ex actually hesitated, shocked by the force of it. Then, slowly, he sat. The dizziness washed over me again, harder this time, like a tide pulling me under. My knees buckled, and I felt myself sway. His arm wrapped around my waist, catching me before I could fall. I exhaled a broken sound, half shiver, half frustration. "Something's wrong." "I know," he said. God, why did his voice feel like the only steady thing in the room? "I can't," I swallowed. "I can't think." "I know," he repeated, calm but edged with an undercurrent of something darker. Anger, not at me, but at the situation. The lights flickered in my periphery. My limbs felt disconnected, weightless. I tried focusing on his hand at my waist, warm, firm, controlled, to stay present, but even that blurred. "He didn't expect someone to notice," the man said quietly, voice a low hum at my ear. "Especially not me." Even in my fog, that hit. The way he said me, as if he wasn't just a random witness, as if his presence here meant something, as if he was someone. My ex shifted, restless in his seat. "Look, man, I didn't— She's lying. She's just trying to make a scene." "Open your mouth," the man said. My ex froze. "What?" "Open your mouth." The authority in that voice was terrifying. Cold. Beautiful in a haunting way. Like he didn't raise his volume because he didn't need to. My vision tilted again. I clutched his jacket instinctively, trying to stay upright. The fabric was expensive, smooth beneath my fingers. His hand tightened at my hip. Not suggestive, just grounding. The room felt distant now, muffled, like sound traveled through cotton. "Wait," I whispered, my words catching. What are you doing?" He looked down at me, eyes unreadable, face close enough for me to see the fine lines of control around his mouth. "Making sure he doesn't walk away from this." The edges of my vision dimmed. "Don't leave me." "I won't," he said without hesitation. Another wave of dizziness hit, heavier, drowning. My fingers slipped from his jacket. My head lulled toward his shoulder, unable to hold itself up. His arm cinched around me, strong enough to keep me standing. My ex's chair scraped loudly. "Hey, what the hell?" The man holding me turned his head slightly, voice still soft but chilling in its certainty. "Open your mouth. Now." Everything blurred, everything swayed. But the last thing I saw before darkness washed over the edges was him, moving, stepping toward my ex, and the expression on his face, focused, cold, absolute. The room went quiet. Too quiet. My heartbeat slowed to a thick, syrupy thud, and just before everything slipped away, I realized he wasn't stepping toward him. He was coming back for me. My knees gave out. My vision cracked apart like glass under pressure, and the last thing I felt was his hand, strong, unyielding, catching me before the world disappeared. Darkness didn't take me all at once. It dragged me under slowly, like sinking through warm water while someone whispered my name far above the surface. I wasn't unconscious. Not fully. But my body refused to respond, and my mind kept drifting in and out, catching only fragments of sound. A low voice. His voice. Firm, controlled, cutting through the fog like a thin beam of light. "Hey, stay with me." A thumb brushed my cheek, barely there, but enough to remind me I still had a face, a body, a pulse. Enough to tug me toward the world again. My lashes fluttered. The first thing I saw was black fabric. His suit. My cheek pressed weakly against it. A warmth beneath it, steady, alive, anchored me when nothing else could. I tried to speak, but my mouth felt heavy, slow. I only managed a faint exhale. His hand tightened around my waist. "Good," he murmured. "Keep trying." The bar's ambient sound felt distant, hazy, but there was tension in the air, thick, electric. Not the panicked kind, the expectant kind. Like a silent audience waiting for someone to snap a finger. I blinked again, forcing my eyes up. The room swayed. My vision doubled, then realigned. The lights above the bar haloed into soft, blurry circles. I realized something important. I wasn't on the floor. I wasn't falling anymore. He was holding me upright against him, his arms secure around me, my head barely resting on his shoulder. Like he'd done this before. Like stabilizing someone on the edge of collapse was second nature. My ex's voice cut through the fog, loud and defensive. "You're insane, man. She's just wasted." The man holding me didn't respond to him. Not verbally. I felt, rather than saw, the shift of his posture, shoulders straightening, jaw tightening slightly. "Don't move," he warned my ex. It wasn't a shout. It wasn't even loud. But something in it made the bar go still. Someone muttered under their breath. A chair creaked. Glasses clinked softly. But no one stepped closer. No one interfered. I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to clear my vision, and when I opened them again, I could finally see him, the man holding me. Not clearly, but enough. Sharp jawline, clean shave. Eyes like deep shadow and amber light, focused entirely on me for a beat so brief I almost thought I imagined it. Then he looked at my ex. "You're going to sit back down," he said quietly, "and you're going to keep your hands visible." My ex's laugh cracked. It wasn't real. It wasn't confident. It was shaky. "You can't just... This isn't a movie, dude. You can't... I said sit." That tone, clean, cutting, unyielding, sent a shiver through my weakened body. My ex sat. He didn't choose to. His body obeyed before his pride could catch up. I inhaled shakily. It felt like breathing through cotton. "What happened?" "You were drugged," he said, with that same low, even calm that somehow made the truth easier to absorb. "You're not safe." The words settled in my slow, muddled brain like stones dropping through water. Drugged. Not safe. The bar felt warmer all of a sudden, not because the temperature changed, but because the truth slid under my skin and ignited something primal. Fear. And beneath fear, humiliation. My ex had done this. He'd looked me in the eyes, smiled, chatted with me like nothing was wrong, and then tried to take away my choice, my body, my safety. Shame knotted in my throat. The man holding me noticed. His gaze flicked downward toward me. Only a second, but enough to register my spiraling emotions. "You're not the one who should be ashamed," he said quietly. The fact that he could read me in a single moment made my breath catch. "Lean on me," he instructed. "I'll take your weight." I didn't want to rely on a stranger. I didn't want to look weak. But when I tried to shift on my own, my leg buckled. He caught me instantly, a hand steadying my hip, fingers strong, but careful. "Easy," he murmured. "Don't fight it." Everything in me wanted to ask who he was, why he was here, how he moved like someone used to being obeyed without question, why he even cared. But I couldn't form the words. He guided me to a nearby chair, one he repositioned slightly with his foot, and lowered me into it with a gentleness that contrasted everything else about him. Cold water appeared beside me, a napkin, a glass of ice. I blinked slowly. I didn't see who brought them. I only saw him take them, set them down, move with a quiet confidence that made my stomach flip despite the nausea. He knelt slightly, one knee lowering so he was closer to my eye level. Not intrusive, not looming, just present. "Listen to me," he said, voice low. "I need you to focus for a moment." I tried. God, I tried. My vision wobbled, and the room faded in and out, but I locked onto his eyes. Dark, centered, controlled. "Good," he murmured. His gaze flicked over my pupils, then my breathing, then the tremor in my hands. Assessing. "You're metabolizing faster than I expected. That's good." I opened my mouth. "How do you know?" That faint, sharp half-smile touched the corner of his lips. "I've seen this before." That wasn't an answer, but it was the truth. My ex shifted in his seat, hands shaking. "Man, look, she's just dramatic. She always—" "Shut up," the man kneeling in front of me said without looking at him. My ex's mouth snapped shut. A ripple went through the bar. Quiet, stunned, like everyone realized at the same moment that this man was not someone to cross. He turned his attention back to me. "Can you hear me clearly?" I nodded weakly. "Name?" he asked. I blinked. "What?" "Tell me your name." It took effort, but I whispered it. He repeated it softly. Not like he was verifying it, but like he was committing it to memory. My stomach flipped again. "Good," he said. "What day is it?" I answered, slower this time. His eyes tracked every hesitation, every stutter. "And do you know where you are?" Linwood Lounge," I breathed. He nodded once. "And do you know who he is?" His chin tilted toward my ex. My eyes stung. My ex." "Good." His voice dropped even lower. "Now tell me if you want him anywhere near you." I didn't hesitate. "No." Something changed in his expression then. A shadow. A decision. He stood slowly, controlled, his posture unfolding with quiet power. He turned toward my ex, who shrank slightly in his seat. "You're going to stay right there," he said, "until I decide what happens next." My ex scoffed weakly. "You don't get to decide. You drugged her," the man said. "Your decisions are over." A hush fell across the bar. Not fear, not chaos. Anticipation. He took a step toward my ex, then another. Slow, measured, like each footfall was a warning. I watched through blurred, glassy eyes, my breathing shallow, my head lolling back slightly against the chair. The lights flickered. The walls pulsed. The room felt too big and too small at the same time. He stopped directly in front of my ex. My ex looked up at him, jaw clenched, pupils wide, fear mixing with the last threads of his fading dignity. "You think you're tough?" my ex spat, voice cracking. "You think you can just—" My vision tunneled. The last thing I saw before it blurred was the man in the suit reaching for my ex's cocktail glass, the one he'd poisoned. He lifted it slowly, deliberately. My ex's face drained. My heart thudded once, then twice, then everything tilted. I heard the man's voice through the haze, low and lethal. "Drink it?" My ex stammered, voice shaking. What? No, I didn't drink it," he repeated, quieter, deadlier. "Or I swear to God, I'll make you." My breath hitched. The bar went silent. My vision faded to black at the edges, and the last thing I heard before consciousness slipped was the fragile sound of glass being set on the table, followed by my ex's trembling breath. I woke to the faint hum of the city seeping through floor-to-ceiling windows. The room smelled of cedar and faint leather polish, grounding me in a space that was not my own. My head throbbed lightly, but it was bearable this time, more of a warning than a punishment. Leon sat across from me in a chair I hadn't noticed before. His posture was perfect, back straight, one hand resting on his knee, the other draped lazily over the armrest. He didn't smile, didn't even blink as I took stock of him, but his presence filled the room, and somehow the emptiness felt smaller. "You're awake," he stated, as if that were the most natural observation in the world. I tried to sit up, wincing as my muscles complained. You're still here." He inclined his head slightly. "Yes, I didn't leave." The edge of my fear didn't soften, but I noticed something else, a strange pulse of safety. Dangerous, yes, but safety nonetheless. I saw what you did," I whispered, voice barely audible. "At the bar." His dark eyes didn't flinch. He watched me like he was examining the rise and fall of my chest, the tremor of my fingers. "Yes, I saw him. I had to stop him." I swallowed the lump in my throat. "Why me? Why did you care?" His gaze drifted to the city lights. For a moment he seemed almost human, though I knew better. "Because you deserved not to be harmed." The simplicity of the answer struck me, but my brain didn't have time to process before it did again, what I didn't even want to admit. The way my pulse jumped when he looked at me, that odd, sick thrill under my fear. I shifted in my seat. And now, what happens to him? Leon's jaw tightened, the subtle motion sending shivers down my spine. Now he faces consequences. He won't walk away from what he did. I nodded slowly, digesting the words. My chest still ached from adrenaline and residual nausea. And me? Where do I fit in all of this? His eyes returned to mine, intense and unreadable. "You don't. Not yet. You simply stay alive. Stay aware. That's enough for now." I shivered, the weight of the reality pressing down on me. Not just the incident, but him. The fact that he could step into a room and shift it with his presence. The fact that he'd protected me without a word of preamble. The fact that even now his calm efficiency both terrified and enthralled me. I should go home," I said haltingly, though I knew it was a lie. My ex was somewhere out there, and home didn't feel like safety. Not anymore. "No," he said firmly. "Not tonight. You're not safe. Not until he's dealt with." The subtle pull of his power pressed into me, and I realized that staying near him wasn't just about physical protection. It was about control. Not his, but the control he restored in me. He anchored me when the world refused to. I looked down at my hands. I don't even know your name. Leon. He spoke it like it belonged to him, like he was carved from it. And you should remember it. You might need it. A thrill of unease, and something more, slid through me. We sat in silence then, the kind that wasn't empty. It was full of anticipation, full of danger, full of unspoken tension. I wanted to ask what he planned for my ex. I wanted to ask how he even knew what had happened. I wanted to scream that I was terrified. But my voice caught each time. Finally, he rose. The chair creaked lightly as he moved, but he didn't approach me directly. Not yet. He was deliberate in the kind of way that reminded me why the bar had gone silent when he'd spoken. "You'll sleep here tonight," he said. "Alone, but not unprotected." I swallowed hard. How do I trust that? His gaze lingered on me, unreadable, and then he answered simply, with that calm, lethal precision I had already begun to understand. You don't need to. But it's your best chance at surviving tomorrow." The threat in that was invisible, subtle, but undeniable. I exhaled shakily, hugging my knees to my chest. "I'm not used to this world." "No," he said, "you're not. But that's not a weakness. That's what keeps you alive. And strangely, that's what drew my attention in the first place." I froze. The words echoed, more than intended perhaps. I dared a glance up. His expression was a mask again, calm and unreadable. But the intensity in his gaze, it held something unspoken and dangerous. "I don't understand," I whispered. "You don't have to," he said. "Not yet." And with that, he turned toward the door. Not leaving, but positioning himself as a guard, a sentinel. His silhouette darkened against the city light, framing him like a predator on watch, elegant and lethal. I realized then how vulnerable I felt. Not just from my ex, not just from the drugged cocktail, but from the realization that my body, my heart, my mind had already begun responding to him in ways I couldn't name, didn't want to name. "You'll wake in the morning," he said over his shoulder. "Alert, clear, and we'll handle what needs handling next." I nodded dumbly, a tangle of fear, gratitude, and an unacknowledged simmering pull twisting in my chest. When he finally settled near the door, I let the exhaustion wash over me. My head hit the pillow, body sinking into soft sheets, but my mind remained alight with the residual tension of the evening. Sleep came slowly, reluctantly, haunted by the memory of my ex's smirk, the drugged drink and the cold, precise way Leon had moved. And beneath it all, a deeper awareness of him. The pull of his presence that I didn't understand but couldn't ignore. Morning came with the soft intrusion of light through the blackout curtains. I blinked, adjusting to the brightness, and instinctively sought him. He was already awake, standing near the window, arms crossed, eyes scanning the streets below. "Morning," I whispered. My voice sounded strange in the enormous room. He turned his gaze toward me, calm, collected, dangerous, familiar. "Morning. Did you sleep?" I think so," I admitted. "But I keep seeing it all again. The drink, him, the bar." He stepped closer, and even without touching me, the air around him felt charged. "That's normal," he said. "You almost lost control. Your body remembers what your mind might prefer to forget." I nodded, feeling the weight of his words sink in. "And him?" "Handled," he said softly, almost dismissively. but the coldness in the single word made my stomach turn and my pulse quicken. I didn't need details to understand that my ex had been made to pay in ways I didn't want to imagine. Why help me? I finally asked, the words spilling despite my fear of the answer. He didn't flinch. He met my gaze, steady, unblinking. Because you needed it, and because I don't like watching injustice happen. There it was again, calm, dangerous, magnetic. I exhaled shakily, my hands fidgeted in the sheets. And now what? Now? His tone shifted slightly, hinted at something darker. Now you start understanding the world you almost fell into, and why you should never trust the wrong people again. The weight of the promise, of the threat, settled over me. And yet, buried beneath that, something else flickered. An unnameable pull toward him. A recognition that even in fear, I wanted to stay close. Even in danger, I was drawn. He studied me quietly, as if reading every flicker of thought, every spike of emotion. And I realized I was no longer thinking about leaving. Not now. Not ever. Because I didn't want to. And that terrified me more than the drugged cocktail ever could. I didn't want to admit how long I held his gaze that morning. Something about the way he stood there, still composed, carved out of shadow and quiet authority, made me feel as if I were looking at someone who already understood pieces of me I had never said out loud. My pulse gave a traitorous stutter when he stepped closer. Not enough to crowd me, not enough to touch me, just enough that I could feel the shift in the air around us, like gravity subtly recalibrating. You should eat, he said. Your body's still recovering. Lightheadedness isn't weakness, it's chemistry. The tenderness of the explanation felt strange, coming from a man whose eyes held steel even when his voice didn't. But there was something startling about the fact that he'd thought about it at all. I nodded. Okay, I can try. He tilted his head slightly, then walked toward the door. The subtle sound of the lock releasing echoed softly through the room. Come downstairs when you're ready. You're not, I hesitated. It felt silly to ask, childish almost. You're not leaving, are you? His expression didn't change, but his voice dropped into something lower, deeper, quieter. No, I don't leave loose ends. I didn't know whether I was the loose end or the aftermath of one. But the reassurance wrapped around me anyway, confusing and warm. He slipped out of the room, closing the door behind him with a softness that didn't match the hardness of his demeanor. I sat up slowly, trying to ignore the residual ache in my skull. My body remembered what had happened. My heart did too. But my breath remembered him. The shower helped. Steaming water, expensive soap, quiet space to let the fear drain through me. I studied myself in the mirror afterward, eyes a little puffy, hair damp and clinging to my shoulders, skin pale but steady. I didn't look like someone who had almost been drugged and dragged away into God knows what nightmare. I looked like someone standing at the edge of something else entirely. Something I didn't understand. Something that wore a suit and didn't raise his voice and could freeze a room with a single glance. I wrapped myself in the soft robe and stepped out into the hallway. The penthouse swallowed me in soft lighting, dark wood floors, and a layout that felt deliberate, open enough to see who was coming, tight enough to keep anyone from hiding. Leon sat at the kitchen island, reading something on his phone. He didn't look up right away, but the moment my steps softened across the floor, he lifted his gaze. And once he did, I couldn't move for a second. He had that effect. Quiet, undemanding, but absolutely claiming all the space his attention landed on. "You look better," he said simply. I swallowed. "I feel less like I'm dying." A flicker, maybe amusement, maybe something else, passed through his expression. "Good." He gestured to the counter. A plate of food sat there. Eggs, toast, fruit. Simple, clean, not overly fancy, but not cheap either. "You made this?" The disbelief slipped out before I could stop it. He hardly looked domestic. "No." The corner of his mouth twitched. "I don't cook, but I told someone to bring it up. Eat." It should have sounded controlling, should have made me bristle. But instead, it steadied something inside me. As if no part of him doubted I would listen. Not because he demanded it, but because he knew what I needed before I did. I took a seat, noticing the way his eyes stayed on me. Not intrusive, not hungry, just watchful, studying. "Are you waiting for me?" I asked quietly. He shook his head. "I'm making sure you don't faint." I paused mid-bite. "Do you really think I'm that fragile?" "No." His tone didn't change, but something in his gaze softened. "I think you've been forced to be strong in the wrong ways. That's different." It struck so deeply I had to set the fork down. My throat tightened unexpectedly, and he didn't look away. Didn't give me the mercy of pretending he hadn't seen the way his words hit something raw. He seemed to know exactly what he'd said, exactly what it meant. I finished eating slowly, aware of him in every breath I took. When I was done, he stood, gathering nothing, just repositioning himself near the island. "There are people looking for him," he said, voice smooth and unnervingly calm. My heart lurched. "My ex?" "Yes." I gripped the edge of the counter. "Because of you?" "Because of his actions," Leon corrected. "Actions have consequences, especially when they involve harming someone under my watch." "Under your watch," I repeated, the words sticking strangely to my ribs. "You mean just last night? Or longer?" His eyes were unreadable, but sharper. "Eat something else." "Leon, finish the fruit." It wasn't a deflection. It was a command softened into something almost gentle. A redirection. A way of telling me that some answers weren't safe yet. But something inside me twisted at the realization that he had been aware of me longer than a stranger at a bar should have been. I ate one more piece of fruit, mostly just to keep my hands busy. The room felt tighter suddenly, not from fear, something else. He stepped closer, just one slow step, and my breath caught. "Last night could have ended very differently," he said softly. "You were seconds away from something irreversible, and that isn't something I overlook." I looked down, unable to hold his gaze. "I know." "You understand what that means?" "I think so," I whispered. His silence confirmed it. "You don't have to be afraid of me," he said. "Not if you're smart. Not if you listen." A tremor moved through me, not from fear, or at least not the kind I could name. "What now?" I asked. "Do I just stay here?" "For now," he answered, "until I decide it's safe." I looked up. "You decide?" "Yes." There was no apology in it, no arrogance either, just fact. He turned, walking toward the living room. The city stretched out behind him, bright and cold through the windows. He stood with his hands in his pockets, shoulders relaxed, posture elegant. "Come here," he said without looking back. My breath stilled. Something in his tone tugged me across the room before my brain caught up. I approached him cautiously, each step loud in my chest. When I reached him, he shifted his stance slightly, giving me space but not distance. "I want to be clear about something," he said. "What happened to you wasn't random." A cold shiver tracked up my spine. "What do you mean?" "He didn't just show up last night to apologize. He's been watching you, he's been following you, and he wasn't alone." My stomach dropped. "How do you know that?" "I saw him twice before he walked up to you, and my people saw him Thursday and Monday." Cold fear saturated my limbs. "Why didn't you say something then?" My voice cracked. His answer was brutally honest. "Because you weren't in danger yet, and you wouldn't have listened." He was right. I would have brushed it off, called him paranoid, assumed he misread something. My ex wasn't that kind of man, I would have said. "I should have noticed," I whispered, shame creeping in. "No." Leon's voice cut through my spiraling thoughts. "You couldn't have known. People like him pick victims who doubt themselves." My breath shook. He watched me closely. I could feel it, even as I stared at the floor. He wasn't just examining my body. He was reading my reactions, my fears, my history. "He won't hurt you again," he said quietly. Something in his tone made the air between us grow warmer, denser, protective, but not soft. Territorial. "Leon, what did you do to him?" The words fell out before I could restrain them. He didn't blink, didn't flinch. "Exactly what he intended to do to you." The floor seemed to tilt beneath me. "Is he alive?" I managed to ask. Leon's expression didn't change. For now. My pulse kicked hard. He didn't say it cruelly. Didn't say it with pride. He said it like a weather report. A fact. A piece of information that didn't need embellishment. "You're shaking," he murmured. I didn't even realize it until he said something. I wrapped my arms around myself, embarrassed, overwhelmed, terrified. Of everything and nothing at once. "Come here," he said again, softer this time. I froze. Leon." "I'm not going to touch you," he said. "But you're unraveling, and I can't help you if you stand over there pretending you're fine." Something inside me cracked at the honesty. Or maybe the exhaustion finally reached the edges. I stepped closer until I was beside him near the window. He didn't reach for me, didn't crowd me, just stood near enough that his presence steadied the air around me. The city lights blurred outside, reflecting faintly against the glass. "You don't have to be strong right now," he said quietly. "You only have to be honest." "I don't know what I am right now," I whispered. "Yes," he said. "You do." My breath hitched. "I'm scared." "Of me?" "No." The answer surprised both of us. He didn't move, didn't breathe differently, but something shifted between us. A softening without softness, a tension without threat. "Good," he said. "Fear keeps you alive, but I need you alert, aware, focused." "On what?" "On everything," he said. "On who's watching, who's following, who's lying, and who isn't." "And you?" I whispered. "Which one are you?" His gaze met mine, dark, deep, consuming. "I'm the one who steps in when no one else will." My chest tightened. "Why me?" I asked again. His jaw flexed once. "I don't make a habit of explaining myself," he said quietly. "But you walked into danger without knowing it. And something about the way you moved, the way you looked over your shoulder, the way you tried to pretend you weren't drowning." He exhaled slowly. "You made it impossible not to notice." A flush warmed my skin. The silence between us thickened, heavy and charged. I looked away first. "Leon, what do I do now?" "You stay here," he said. "You listen, and you don't walk into danger again. And if danger finds me anyway? His answer was immediate. It already has. I lifted my eyes, and he stepped just half an inch closer, not touching me, not threatening, but making the world feel smaller, safer, darker all at once. You're under my protection now, he said, whether you understand that or not. A quiet beat passed, then another. Does that mean I'm safe? I whispered. His gaze lowered, sweeping my face, a slow, unreadable assessment. It means, he murmured, that anyone who tries to hurt you won't be. My breath shuddered out of me. But you, he added, voice dropping to something deeper, need to decide whether you trust that. I held his gaze. I didn't trust easily, but I trusted him. At least, I wanted to. And that scared me more than anything else. The next few hours passed in a strange blur. Leon didn't leave my side, not physically, but the sense of his presence lingered in every corner of the penthouse, shaping the air, the light, the silence. I wandered from the kitchen to the living room, touching surfaces that smelled faintly of his cologne, feeling the weight of his watchful gaze even when he sat a few feet away. I tried to make sense of the chaos of the previous night, the sudden panic, the drugged cocktail, the helplessness. But each memory was tempered now by the presence of him. Leon's calm had a gravity to it, pulling the fear and adrenaline from me, replacing it with a strange, terrifying comfort. I was still tense, still raw, but I was standing. I was breathing. I was alive. He said very little, answering my fragmented questions with short, deliberate sentences. Each word held weight, each glance a measure of careful control. There was no theatrics, no unnecessary explanation. Just his presence and the reality of the world he commanded. At some point, I found myself seated on the sofa, wrapped in a soft blanket he had draped over me without comment. Outside, the city continued its indifferent hum, taxis and streetlights buzzing faintly through the glass. And for the first time since the night before, I allowed myself to close my eyes, to sink into the fragile, temporary safety he had built around me. Hours passed in a lull of quiet conversation, and then, finally, he spoke, his voice low and measured. You can't go back to your old life, not yet. I shivered, feeling the truth in his words. I know, I don't even think I could if I tried. You won't need to, he said. Not if you stay careful, not if you keep your wits. You're alive because you were alert, because you survived. Don't forget that. I nodded, swallowing hard. The words were simple, but the message lingered, heavy and unwavering. I had been handed a temporary reprieve, a chance to breathe before the storm inevitably returned. What happens now? I asked, my voice almost a whisper, afraid to disturb the delicate balance that held the moment together. You stay alive, he said, his gaze locking onto mine. You stay aware. You don't let anyone get close enough to harm you, and you let me handle the rest. The calm finality in his tone made my pulse quicken. There was no hesitation, no wavering. The world outside might be cruel, my ex might be dangerous, but within this penthouse, under Leon's watch, I was safe. For now, I let the realization sink in, a strange sense of relief washing over me. My shoulders loosened, my chest stopped aching with anxiety. I was alive. I had survived the worst of it, and for the first time in weeks, I felt almost normal. Thank you, I murmured, my voice shaky but genuine. He gave me a fleeting nod, the closest thing to acknowledgement I had ever received from him. Don't thank me. It's not done yet. But you've earned your moment of reprieve. I leaned back into the cushions, letting myself feel the safety, the quiet, the stillness. The city continued outside, relentless and indifferent. But in here, with him, I could breathe. I could exist without fear, at least for the next few hours. And yet, even as I sank into the temporary calm, I felt the pull of his presence, subtle but insistent. Dangerous, commanding, magnetic. It reminded me that this peace was fragile, that the world beyond these walls was still full of threats, that Leon was a man who didn't explain everything, who held power in ways I could barely comprehend. But for now, that was enough. The day stretched on in quiet observation. Leon moved around the apartment with the precision of someone who controlled every corner of their world. He made calls, checked on unknown contacts, and kept an eye on the streets below through the panoramic windows. I watched him, fascinated and apprehensive, realizing that even in silence, he was shaping the reality of this space, carving out order from the chaos that waited outside. Hours later, I found myself on the balcony, staring down at the city with its lights blinking like distant stars. The night had settled in, cool and sharp, and I felt a strange peace beneath the tension still lurking in my veins. Leon stood behind me, silent, a shadowed guardian whose presence I no longer questioned. "You're thinking too much," he said softly, his voice brushing against me like a subtle breeze. I shivered. "I can't help it." "Try," he said, and in that one word there was authority, challenge, and almost care. I nodded, leaning into the fragile structure of his presence. For now, there was no danger. For now, I was safe. And for now, I could let myself feel something, almost like calm. The night passed slowly, without incident. When the city finally quieted to a dull hum, I finally allowed myself to sleep, curled under the same blanket, aware of him nearby but not imposing. The last hours had been surreal, terrifying, and strangely intimate, and I couldn't name the complex emotions twisting inside me. Morning came with the sun spilling gold across the floor, illuminating the penthouse in a soft, deceptive tranquility. I stretched, noting the taut muscles from days of stress, and felt an almost human warmth, the fragile, temporary reality of surviving. Leon was already awake, seated near the kitchen island, watching the streets below, calm and silent as ever. "You're up," he said without turning. "I am," I replied, and there was no tension in my voice, no fear, just observation, just awareness. "Good," he said. "Eat, prepare, stay ready. And remember, your life, for now, is under my watch. Do not forget it." I nodded, swallowing hard. The temporary reprieve was still real, but I knew deep down that it wouldn't last forever. Danger lingered beyond the walls of this penthouse, and the shadows of the past would always attempt to reach me. But for now, I had survived. For now, I had breath. For now, Leon was there, and that was enough. I glanced at him, and even in the silence, I felt the pulse of his control, the invisible tether that kept me anchored. The pull, subtle and undeniable, made me shiver. I had stepped into something I couldn't fully understand, a world of darkness and danger. And yet, I had hope. A fragile, dangerous hope. And for now, that was enough. If you like the story, comment below for part 2 and subscribe to Mara's Betrayal.